I would say nothing tests a marriage like a kitchen reno.
Well, I think we had a nice little break over the last couple of weeks. We had a long weekend. Maybe not a break from real estate, but we had a break from each other for doing the podcast.
We did. Our schedules kind of got slammed there, and we had to kind of like. Well, we ended up pushing it off. We were only supposed to be for a day or so, and then it just ended up being a week. So we kind of missed a week there, but you know, not I mean, not necessarily a bad thing, right? It was life was good. Things were busy. Weather was wonderful. You know, got to spend some time with the family in the pool, etc. Try to have as much of a long weekend as you can, but I don't know about you. We worked every day.
Yeah. It's like, well, we both know real estate's a lifestyle, right? So you're like, oh, I've got 6 hours where I don't have to do anything. But showings get in the way. Obviously listings, client calls, dealing with other realtors. I had a mishap yesterday with a lockbox where lockbox wasn't opening. So between me and the client, we had to find another key, get a new lockbox, and literally go meet clients right then and there because there was 2 back-to-back showings. So we all know things can happen very quickly in real estate, right? Our line of work, we have to be ready, right? We have to be available.
That's right. Either that or have the systems in place to make sure that the clients are taken care of.
Exactly.
100%. Well, welcome to another show of the newly named Rambling Realtors.
And we will ramble. Don't you worry about that.
It was such an appropriate name.
I was thinking,
so episode 15, here we are.
Episode 15?
Yep.
Awesome. It feels like we just started episode 1 just last week.
I know. It does seem like just a very short time ago, but here we go. Chat today. A topic that you wanted to bring up was, do we stay or do we go? And I thought it actually was, it's a great topic. I think almost in any market, but in a busy market like this, there's and we'll talk about what the market's doing on another show and get into that a little bit deeper. But in a market like this, where the real estate market is kind of crazy and the prices are going up, and the work from home, everybody wants the gym, all that kind of stuff. Having the element of do I have enough space? Should I renovate? Right? Or do I move? And if I do move, can I afford to stay in the neighborhood that I want, or the city that I want, or town, or region even? Or are you looking at, a lot of the people that have been moving west, or, down into Niagara region, or even up north, whatever the case may be, right? Maybe moving out to try to find something either for the same price and the same size. Same price and bigger, or the same size and reducing their mortgage. A lot of people were going for that mortgage-free goal, right? And we had a handful of clients that achieved that, and that's exciting, to a large degree, to say, hey, I'm in my late 30s or in my early 40s, and I am now mortgage-free. So so let's get started on it. Do I stay or do I go?
No, exactly. So, I mean, a lot of the times a lot of people are excited right now on how much their homes have gone up in value, right? And you might ask them the question of like, oh, well, what would I get for my home? And then a lot of the times they'll hear, well, where would I move, right? 100%. And I think something that a lot of people will say is, where do you want to move? And location's in the eye of the beholder. So in terms of what your goal is, what your dream is, a lot of it revolves around your family, your children, for the schools, right? You mentioned it right there. A lot of the time, you need to look at, are you staying in the same school districts or moving for high school, right? Or when there's those, and if you have more than 2 children, there's always those variables, right? There's always those unknowns. So, we have some amazing trades. We have all these amazing trade people. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there that might need to refresh in their landscape of their house. The question is, are they maybe preparing for resale down the road, right? So it's kind of a question of, do I stay or do I go? And, what would you like to do in terms of basically planning? Like I talk about, there's 3 things you got to do, the 3 Ps, right? So the planning, and then you're going to have the permits, and then the protection as well too, right? So making sure that everything's done properly, sort of thing. And then what's going to get you the best return on investment as well too, right? As we go through it, a lot of the times, like I've been looking at flooring, like different types of flooring for my home, right? And over the last 10, 12 years, we've seen a change where people are going to the smoky gray flooring. We're seeing the wider slats, and we're seeing longer flooring as well too, right? So easy changes for if you want a landscape change, or go get some paint chips, right? Go get some different styles of paint, and then look at what you want for flooring, and then pot lights, right? I talk about paint, pot lights, and flooring. You make it light and bright, make it something that's going to be fun and acceptable, because you and I both know when we're staging homes, there's been a lot of people that have that very bright white or the neutral grays that we're using, similar to the backdrops of both of the walls in our rooms right now, where you want that, it feels fresh, it feels light, and it brings in the natural light from outside as well too. So those are just a few things that you want to address when you're thinking about planning for renovations. And that's very, very cost effective, what I said there. We can go into a little bit more detail in terms of, okay, so you want to open up some walls and things like that as we continue talking.
Yeah, I think you started off, with you saying, what's your budget, right? And that's key. Obviously, everybody wants, I shouldn't say everybody wants, but a lot of the times people say, okay, well, I would love to do a complete remodel, right? But not everybody has 150 grand or more to put into their house, right? So what's the budget? And I would say the very first and the easiest thing to do, as you said, Ross, was paint. And even if you already have some lighter color walls, sometimes it's a trend from yesterday's trend, right, kind of thing, where they might be the more beigeish taupey kind of, they're still kind of light, but they're a darker light, a cream color, right? Whereas the trend now, of course, is the more whites, the off whites, the light grays, etc., right? Which of course a lot of people have seen. So whether it's you've got, when we take a listing, oftentimes walk around and say, one of the first things you should do is paint, and that's just to brighten it up, like you said, kind of make it a little more trendy, but also just cover up some of the blemishes that kind of make a house just kind of feel tired. I'm not gonna lie to you, we did a renovation in our house like years ago, and there's a small corner that never got painted, and it's at the bottom of some stairs, and you only notice it when you're walking by those stairs, and I don't even notice it anymore. And that's kind of my point, right? It's something that you just don't notice. And so a lot of times, it's just background noise, so to speak, right? So if you want to freshen up the house, coat of paint, a couple $1,000. If you do it yourself, maybe even just maybe under $1,000, get the paint in your own labor, or you hire it out and you're a few $1,000 to get it done. But an instant change in the look and feel of your house, right? And then, like you said, if you wanted to get into changing out the flooring, that'll be very impactful. I wouldn't say less so, but adding the pot lights just kind of, it's more of an accent than it is a dramatic change. But it's certainly, it's all those subtleties that make, all those things that make the difference, right? When you add it all together, I think as that snowball can grow, you're getting into full kitchen renos, you're getting into full bath renos, etc. And it can go and go and go and go. But like we said at the beginning, okay, well, what's the budget? How much do you have to put into it? And then what could you get done for that budget, right? And you don't have to go super crazy either. You don't have to go and get the $50,000 kitchen, right? It could be as simple as painting the cupboards, which could be for maybe $3,000. Or you could say, okay, I'm going to change the doors on all my cupboards, but I'm going to keep the cupboards themselves, right? Like there's things that can be done, changing the countertops, changing the backsplashes, right? All kinds of stuff like that are relatively simple and cost effective. So, what do you want to do? What's your budget? That kind of stuff. Or do you just move?
Yeah, well, and we talk about space as well too, and we're definitely going to come back to, do you just move? But I mean, and don't be afraid to go with bold colors as well too, right? Like, you know, going into a house where it's a dusky gray, like I have an ocean blue in my living room. It's something that I'm passionate about. I like that a lot. I think like just putting on hardware on the cabinets as well too. You paint them, you put on hardware. It's a very inexpensive change if you are planning on moving and you've got dated cabinets. We'll come back to kitchen renos and having full length cabinets a little bit later on. But I think that the reality is you just make it your own, make it something like if you like it, the odds are that you want it to attract to a larger target audience if the plan is to resale. But say you're thinking about moving and maybe it's this time next year or it's a couple of years from now. Enjoy it. Don't wait until 3 months before you're planning to move and then you do it. Enjoy it now and make it your own, and it's going to give you a lot more pride in ownership. You know, when we look at the planning, I would always recommend getting a few quotes. I would bring people in, like we're getting all this suggestive marketing that we're seeing on TV, right? Like lawn care, you know, obviously there's these amazing shows like Pool Kings for doing all these crazy things for pools. And then a lot of paint commercials that we see for gives you the ideas. And then, yeah, as you and I both said, one thing leads to another. But you bring people in, you could do it cheap. You could go to Home Depot or Lowe's. They can give you some ideas for what you want to do. So planning, that was the first P, right? Planning, kind of making sure you have a plan, sketches, kind of make it your own. And then obviously think about what you said, your budget. You know, is this a $5,000 reno or is this a $50,000+ reno? So the next thing would be permits, right? And you and I both know when we're getting permits, you know, there's many different positive things about permits. They will cost you time and they will cost you money, but what is the expression? It's better to beg for forgiveness than to ask for acceptance, right? I think that's an old English saying. But you know, instead of just
what are we saying? When I was in the
what's that?
time. But maybe that kind of goes against going and getting the permits though.
Well, yeah, no, and that's why, I mean, you want that check mark from the city. You don't want to be doing it and then finding out, oh, your fence did not meet up to code, and you're going to basically have to tear it all down and do it all again. The same thing applies for the structural integrity of your home, right? This is your home. This is like understanding about fire separation, about all the different materials. You're going to learn something along the way as well too. You bring in these city officials. This is what they went to school for. They know what they're doing, and they're going to educate you on many different things that's going to ensure not only safety, but you're going to have everything in place. Yeah, it's going to cost time and money, but at the end of the day, you're going to do it properly, and you're not going to be left there. And you're also going to have a better understanding of your budget as well too. So what's that going to cost you at the end of the day?
Yeah, and you don't need permits for everything, of course, right? I mean, obviously, I mean, it goes without saying, you don't need permits to paint, right? You don't need permits to change out your flooring. But if you're doing anything structural, of course, you need permits for that. If you're moving plumbing, if you're doing extensive electrical stuff, if you are, you know, again, building decks or building sheds, well, depending on the size of the shed, you know, et cetera, right? So, but you know, I think you touched on it. It's the safety element of it, and a lot of times people think, well, I don't want to pay for the permit for someone just to be like, yep, okay, or give you a hard time. But the idea there is, like you said, right? It's a third party view to make sure that it was done correctly. And we all know, you know, that there's terrible used car salesmen out there, there's terrible lawyers out there, there's terrible realtors out there, and there's terrible contractors out there, right? That'll talk a big game, and they show up and they've done atrocious work. And the last thing you want is if something that's serious, something structural, for it to be just kind of done, you know, on the cheap, on the sloppy, on the rush, and not completed properly. And sooner or later, you know, that call it $8,000 wall removal turns into a $60,000 to $75,000 shoring up and fixing the structure of your house, right? I'll share with you just while we're on that topic. My sister years ago bought a place in Toronto, in Bloor West Village, an old, century home. And the previous owner had decided, you know what, open concept is the way to go right now. And literally, I'm not even kidding you, no permits, no beams, nothing, just took down the supporting walls, just opened it up, right? And it looked pretty. And they went in and they said, wow, this is a pretty home, blah, blah, blah. First time buyers, didn't know anything about it, and lived there for, I don't know, I want to say 9 years before they started really seeing, evidence of the house not being in a good state. Anyways, long story short, there was a crack that started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're like, that crack's getting bigger. And they brought in the city, or brought in someone to say, hey, what's the deal here? And the city came in, was the contractor had to bring in the city because of the issue that he found. And the city condemned their house on the spot.
Wow.
Get out. Right. And they're like, I can't get out. Like, I got nowhere to go, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so they said, okay, well, here's the workaround. We have to put supporting walls up down the center of your house, both in the basement and on the main floor, to keep the house from falling down now. And they lived like that for, I think, 9 months before they were able to get a contractor to come in and deal with all that kind of stuff. They were dealing with title insurance and all that kind of stuff as well. But anyways, I digress. It could seem like it's not a big deal, and then it can be a very big deal in no time flat. And of course, they ended up doing, while they're gutting their house, they figured, well, we might as well do some upgrades. But that ended up costing them about $200,000. Right? I think it was about $150,000 of that was to fix the house.
What a
Right?
great example of why you need a permit, right? Like, if you're opening up walls, like people like you and I will understand going through a home if a wall can be taken down simply, or if it has the structural integrity to the house. But there's a lot of people out there that won't necessarily understand that by looking at a home, right? So
and not to sort of cut you off there, not to suggest that we are structural engineers or have any type of hardcore credentials that, as far as that's concerned. However, it's a trained eye to be like, I can all but guarantee you this is a structural wall, the way that this house is laid out. Right. Regardless, you always want to have an engineer come in and say, can I take this wall down?
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, sorry. Disclaimer.
Yeah, right. In bold lettering. If you are opening up walls, then an engineer or an architect, make sure you get the proper drawings so that you understand the structural integrity of your home. You don't want a sagging home. You don't want to be condemned and have a place to
Nothing that sagging is good, right? Let's just be real here. Anything that's sagging is not good.
So your do-it-yourself does not include just taking down a wall just because I'm bored, right? So let's make sure that we're planning, right? And then that we're also getting the permits in place that we need. You nailed it. Electrical work, plumbing, demolition, if you're doing any demolition like we discussed, the structural integrity of your home. If you want to build up, and that's another conversation too. If you're building out or you want to build up on your home, understanding what that's going to cost. It's a great way to add on your home. I think it's an awesome option for people out there. And you and I know it's not going to be cheap. You're looking at $250,000 to $300,000-$400,000 to, if you're running out of space in your home and you got a big family that's starting to get a little bit bigger. Those toddlers are turning into they're getting into running around the house and they're taking up more space. Well, the question is it easier to move, or should I be looking at getting all these things in place to move? And then protection, right? We talked a lot about the protection there as well too. But if you are doing anything yourself, please protect your eyes, your hands, your ears, your feet, right? Let's put on safety gloves, safety goggles, put in ear protection. Please wear safety boots. We don't want anyone having to go to the emerge to deal with that as well too. It's never fun. I think I've injured all of those. I've grown up in construction restoration and enough sports injuries that I always feel like respiratory, wear your masks, and also fire extinguisher, right? Like if you're going to be starting doing stuff, then it's a simple thing to have, but please have a fire. Even if you're not planning on doing anything to your home, people go out, buy fire extinguishers, because it could be the difference between, having a home to live in and having to move. So,
Actually, on that note, that's an interesting one. As I say, an interesting one. It's a good one. Like, how many people actually have a fire extinguisher in their house?
readily available, and they know where it is right now.
I know mine's in my front hall closet. Right, as
There
soon
you
as you open the door, bam, there it is. Right.
go.
Everybody talks about, okay, I got my smoke detector and I got my CO2 detector now, which of course is like a no-brainers. Um, but rarely do people actually have a fire extinguisher on hand, readily available, and not expired.
There you go.
Right. Yeah, it's
That's
something to
moving for
grab.
party
Right.
tricks either.
They're not a lot of money, and again, it's just one of those safety things. Like, listen, if you'll go to Starbucks, a few times a week and grab a coffee for the same amount of like a week's worth of Starbucks or a couple weeks worth of Starbucks, get a fire extinguisher.
I saw it at Costco on sale recently for like $40.
Yeah, they're not expensive.
Yeah, go out and like everyone might think, oh, it's like a $200 purchase. No, it's $30, $40, $50 for the protection of you and your family.
Yeah, yeah.
A little bit of a peace of mind knowing that you've got that, right? So
if you do want to renovate, okay, some good options like you touched on there. If you want to do additions and all that kind of stuff, that's always an option. Especially if you love your neighborhood, you love your house, you love everything about where you are, and you don't want to move. You just wish you had a bigger home. There's options there, right? I mean, not every house will necessarily give you the option, especially some of the newer ones that like they put a 3,000 square foot house on a 20 by 80 foot lot, and you might have enough room for a blade of grass left on, but there's maybe some older houses that were built smaller on a larger lot that it doesn't make sense to tear them down, but it could make sense to, potentially. I've seen a bunch of houses where the upstairs, the main house was, one structure, but it has an attached garage that doesn't have a second floor over it. I've seen people, or Lisa and I have gone into a home and considered, okay, how could we build out over top of the garage to make that the new master or a second floor family or something like that, right? Like, there's ways to look, like when you look at a house, to say, okay, where would you be able to add on to this? Maybe, I mean, I think probably the most common add-on is probably like a sunroom off the back, right? You see that a ton of times, right? A sunroom off the back, but whether that's a sunroom off the back, or you're expanding the family room or adding a living room, and do you dig out the basement as well? A lot of people don't dig out the basement for the cost. But if you do dig out the basement, now you're doubling, or maybe adding like 30% to the size of the basement for an extra rec room for the kids, or theater room, or gym nowadays, right? Like, there's options there, right? There's lots of things that you can do, and it's a process. It's harder than moving, and not to say that moving is easy, right? But yeah, it's a process, and there's some unknowns, and you got to live in the construction and all that kind of stuff, and it's not wonderful, but sometimes it's a perfectly good option, rather than moving and giving up the neighborhood that you're living in, and chances are you're going to be adding a lot of value to the house.
Yeah, you raised some amazing points there. Like, I always think of the two best style of homes to build up on are side splits and bungalows, right?
Totally.
And then you touched on the basement. Well, pinning a basement and then going down, because if it's a really old home, you're going to be hitting your head. You're a little taller than me, but those 6 foot, 7 foot basements are horrible. So it's to pin it down and to deal with the foundation structural integrity of a home, and then you're opening up a whole bunch of can of worms. So that's something you might see more in Toronto, where these professional companies are designed for pinning down, and they're going to build down another 2-3 feet. So you get those 8-9 foot basements, right? And we talk about the decline. Home goes through its maturity and then its decline. And then, a lot of these older neighborhoods, like you and I know, they have these larger sprawling lots. Well, you need to know about the zoning. You need to know about the actual, and go through the planning committee as well too, to say, well, what's the maximum coverage? What's the largest home I can have in terms of square foot on that lot? So there's a lot of different things that you need to go through just in order to do it. But going back to whether you build up on, like, back splits are difficult to build up on, right? So if you're looking long term and you're like, I'm going to see, this is the last house I'm ever going to buy, I'm not moving. Well, looking at building up on a bungalow or a back split is going to give you a lot more options. And those ones always have larger frontage of lots, right? Typically, you'll have larger lots on the older neighborhoods, which a lot of people like because they get a bigger backyard and there's more to do. So just ensuring that, all the more reason you need permits and a plan for when you're doing this, right?
For sure. And at the end of the day, if that's just not in the cards, right? And you're like, okay, I explored this option. I don't necessarily have, like you said, like, $200,000, $300,000 to add on to this, etc. I mean, don't forget, there's options. You could get into basically builder mortgages at that point, construction mortgages, if you're going to be doing that. So talk to a mortgage broker, reach out. We got some great connections for mortgage brokers to say, okay, I want to do a build. I want to do a massive addition onto my house. And I think it's going to be, I'm guessing it's going to be 200 grand or 250 grand, which I don't have. What are my options to do a construction mortgage on an existing residence? And there are programs for that. So don't think like, well, I don't have 250 grand sitting in the bank right now, cash, so I can't do it. Yeah, you can do it. There's options. So reach out if you have any questions about that. But if that's not in the cards and you want to move, then of course the question is, what did you love about your house, your neighborhood, etc.? What can you keep there? And then, maybe the question is, okay, what can I do relatively cost effectively to boost the value of my house so I can sell it for as much as I possibly can, and then go and buy something else that would be bigger and or more suit what I'm looking for as far as the house go without giving up too much. Right.
Perfect. And when we talk about return on investment, right, one of the things we talked about right at the start of this show and in previous shows is return on investment, right? So, okay, if you're not going to open up walls, right, then I would always say, if you're not going to do the kitchen, the best place to put your money is in the bathrooms, right? And from a resale standpoint, maybe you live in an older home and one of the bedrooms is larger, and maybe you have the opportunity to open up that old bathroom, take down a bit of the wall of one of the larger bedrooms, and then, then you can make a nice ensuite, right? A larger ensuite. Or if it's a really massive bedroom, you could even potentially make a walk-in closet as well too. So those are really nice features and it's very few homes, like more the 80 builds, I find, like it's the square footage, right? What can't you change with your home? Like what you and I are talking about, the major renovations are if you're going to build out and you're going to build up, right? But what can you do within the walls? What can you do within your existing walls of your home that's going to give you the most enjoyment of use and what's going to give you the best return on investment?
Well, so like you touched on it, like, that's been the old adage forever, has been kitchens and bathrooms, right? And I would actually probably, I might even go as far nowadays to say kitchens, bathrooms, backyard, right? And depending on the size of your backyard and what you can do with it. I mean, I don't know, I've seen some amazing small backyards, right? I mean, there's nothing more depressing than looking into a backyard and seeing, the 3 builder patio stones just out the door and a bunch of dead grass, right?
And no fence. Right?
Well, heck, maybe there's a fence or not, but it's just depressing, like wah, 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 right? But like,
got nothing going on back there.
No, like whether it's like just some a nice, like, again, you can treat your backyard the way you treat your house. Like you have an accent wall, you can have an accent tree or an accent bush. You can have a nice deck that doesn't take the entire backyard. You can have 2-tiered decks and multiple levels to it, which just kind of gives us some dimension and feel. You could do interlock patio stones. You could do a pond if your house is big enough, a pool and landscaping, all that kind of stuff, right? Like you can go all out in the backyard. You can do like a little pool hut. I was golfing the other day when it finally opened, and the golf course that we were golfing on had houses like everywhere backing onto the golf course. So of course, we're sitting there golfing on our tee box, looking into everyone's backyard. And one backyard had a pool, but then had um, like an outbuilding, like a hut, an open hut. Like it was, I call it a bar for lack of a better term, because it wasn't a bar, but it kind of was. So it had two stools, and there was two like teenagers sitting there eating lunch with a big screen TV, watching sports highlights, right? And
That's one of my dreams for my backyard, what you just described there.
right. And so it wasn't a big outbuilding. It wasn't huge. It didn't have like a living room and all that kind of stuff, but it was relatively small, simple, quaint, but fit the area perfectly. And it kind of it finished the backyard very nicely, right? So just because you're like, my backyard isn't big enough, I guarantee you go to a landscaping company that is that has a lot of creativity and has a lot of vision and does really good work. And they're going to probably draw up something that you're going to absolutely fall in love with, right? And again, nowadays, people love it, right? So kitchens, bathrooms, backyard, right? And then you could even go and say, okay, basement. What are you doing with the basement that is adding tons of value in a nice, good, functional space, not just, it's a den, or there you throw an extra bedroom down there, right? Like it's a beautiful, but when you walk downstairs, you're like, I want to live down here. you know, whether it's man cave style, or even just more suitably just a nice, very comfortable family setting that's usable.
Love it. Love it.
Tons of things you can do.
Yeah, and doing things in phases too, right? Like we touched on in the beginning, you can do things quite easily. You could just do flooring, you could do pot lights, and you could do painting, right? That's cost effective, and that's what we would suggest if you're preparing to sell your home. Make it light and bright. If you're doing the pot lights, another thing too, it's great to see you put the drywall up, have a flat ceiling. Let's eliminate the popcorn ceilings, because how many people do you know that actually like parquet, the popcorn ceilings? It's kind of the same thing as parquet flooring, right? It's an acquired taste, right? So
I've only ever met one person that was like, that wanted the parquet flooring, that loved that style and wanted to put parquet flooring in. Can we take this out and put parquet in? Listen, to each their own, right? I'm not going to be like, why would you do that? I'm like, hey, this is your house, man. This is your dream. I don't care, right? Whatever you want to do. But I'm like, I'm not sure how many people do parquet anymore, but that's an interesting one. Sure.
And then like what you said, like whether it's for the front yard or for the backyard, like curb appeal is huge, right? Like putting in like a sprinkler, and doing things in phases. So it might be putting in a sprinkler system before you put in all the flower beds and the new sod, and making sure, like if you want to do a little siding, like I'm seeing a lot of people doing new siding, or they want to do, just a plinth where you're having a stone wall come up for the first 4, 5, 6 feet on your exterior wall. It's a nice accent, right? It gives your house a new look. My neighbors across the way, they just painted their house a nice white. There's things to be said that are good and bad about painting your exterior brick. That's a conversation for another day. But it gave it a really nice pop, right? It gave it a really fresh look, and they've got beautiful landscaping, so it complemented the home really, really well. So get out there. We have amazing tradespeople. We've got all these amazing designers too. So whether you're wanting to do something inside, outside, in the basement, you can contact us at any time, and we can put you in contact with some of our trusted advisors for doing the trades, right? I know that over time, we've acquired some amazing tradespeople, and you can also ask us, well, how is this going to improve the value of my home as well too? So we can give you a projected value, and also an idea of sweat equity, blood tears. Are you going to live through these renovations, right? Because that can be difficult, living through major renovations. So you can plan it around a vacation, or if you have a cottage to go to, or you don't want to live through it, depending on the size and the scale of the renovations.
Yeah, I would say nothing tests a marriage like a kitchen reno. Right? When you don't have a kitchen, like the heart of the home, when you don't have a kitchen for 2 months.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I mean, my mom has done it twice. I don't know why she did it again the second time, but she's done it twice. And I've got a bunch of clients, and they're, you're doing your dishes in the bathtub, right? You got a small little like heating element or something like that, and they're, you try to make Dewey eat out a ton, but yeah, it's be ready for that one. Be ready for a kitchen reno when you don't have your functioning kitchen, and you're just like, why isn't anything ready? I just wanted some countertops, or I just needed some cabinets or whatever, right? But no, it doesn't come together the same way, right? You generally speaking, if you're going to do a full kitchen reno, like a gut job into a new kitchen, the cabinets go in, and then the counter guys will come in to measure the way that the cabinets are actually in, and then go out to get it cut. So oftentimes, like getting that counters, those take a few weeks, if not like over a month or so, right? So be ready for that. It's not just a simple like, yeah, we're going to get this done over a weekend or a week. It doesn't happen that nicely, unfortunately.
No, and easy rule of thumb is we've talked about inside and outside. If you're doing any of the interior renovations, that's best to do in the colder months. And if you're doing anything on the exterior, you do those while the sun is shining and it's warm out, right? You want to look like, if you're doing decks or any woodwork or roof work, best time to do that's the dead of the summer. I mean, we haven't been getting a lot of rain right now. We're at the end of May, right? So great time to do any of those exterior jobs. It's great for foundation work as well too. So if you are planning, now's the time. Basically now up until September is your ideal opportunity for doing the exterior. It's the perfect conditions. Might be a little bit hot for the guys doing the work, but
well, I was actually going to say it might be too late now. I think you gotta plan, going back to your planning element.
You're planning for next year if it's going to be anything structural now.
Yeah, so you should be doing anything.
There's a shortage of tradespeople during the pandemic as well too, right? So
yeah. So if you're going to be doing anything winter related, you should be looking into that now, right?
Totally.
If you wanted to be doing things this spring, you probably should have been booking that in November or December, right?
Or you're planning for 2022 now. So
yeah, it's shortage of materials. Strain on trades, and even still, like I think it really coming down. I've talked to a bunch of trades about stuff, and I was talking to one the other day, and there's a 6-month delay on toilets.
Really?
Yeah, 6 months for toilets right now.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's crazy.
If you're looking at doing bathroom renos, then plan them now for November.
I can't believe it's 6 months.
Right.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And that taps and stuff like that. Like there's a bunch of things that are backlogged months and months, right? So yeah, don't think like, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about doing a reno next month. There's a strain on the system, right? There's a strain on workers, et cetera, right? So anyway,
great episode.
Good chat. This was a fun one as well, because it kind of gets the creative juices in your head going, right? As far as like thinking back to all the houses that I've come across, whether we were looking at it for a flip or we were looking at it to to buy in the past, or we're going through them with clients. There's a lot of things where I really like that element of seeing the before and after, almost, right? Like to say, okay, what could you do with this place, right? And to see walk into a house and see the potential, and hope and pray that if you don't buy that house, so the next person does what you see, right? And I saw that once. One time it was a house in Milton here that we seriously considered flipping, because it was dated. Like it was very well kept, but it still looked like the day it rolled off, like the last contract, put the last nail in, right? Like it was nothing had been done since 1968, right? Anyways, I walk into the place and I'm just like, hey, all right, so to your point, open up this wall, add an addition here, go up over top of the garage, etc. Blah, blah, blah. But we knew that was going to be a big one. And at the time, we just didn't have the budget for it, right? So hemmed and hawed, and we eventually, we kind of let it go. And then someone grabbed it. And it was one of those things like, someone took it, right? You lost it, right? But anyways, they did exactly what we envisioned. So it was really cool to see after it was done, how good that house looked afterwards.
Yeah, you can pretty much do anything with money. Like if you want to build up on a home or out on it, depending on, there's certain things you can't change. Like, you know, if you're living, like I think of my sister and her beautiful family right now and 4 little nephews. They're running around crazy right now, but they have the beautiful house. It's over 3,000 square foot home, but they've got a small backyard.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where there's certain elements of a home you can't change. Like building up on a home, if you don't have a lot of construction knowledge and you're just going to trust your general contractor and it's, you know, $300,000-$400,000 project, well, there's going to be some changes. And every time you make a change, it's going to cost you time and money, right? All of these things will cost you time and money. So if certain things you can change and there's certain things you definitely can't. So neighborhood, price, and then looking at what your overall plan is. Are you going to be in this home for the next 20 years? Or is this you're planning on, well, we want to move out of town and our goal, this is a 2-year goal. Yeah. Well, enjoy it now. Get the best use out of it versus waiting and then maybe you're backlogged with tradespeople a year or 2 from now, right? And it gives you more time. There's going to be changes. There's going to be things that come up. You and I both know. You talked about the countertops. There's all these things like ordering in flooring, ordering in that beautiful slab of granite that's going to take a couple months, right? So these things take time.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, until the next show, we got some good ones coming up here. Ross has got his thinking cap on, and we had some good discussions about some future shows here. So we got some good topics coming up. So tune in next time. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the podcast, make sure you get that done as well.
Awesome. You guys have a great day.
Talk to you later.